right, I guess we're live. Good morning, everyone. So for this particular brown bag lunch, we are going to look at how we eco-design a low-tech website in Zenica, Singapore. So we are trying this new format. Usually you might be accustomed to our remote classes where we would share about some topics. Today we wanted to try if a live session during lunchtime would be a bit better for you. Anyway, this session is recorded. It's a live stream, but you can watch it and replay it again and again. Okay. So let's deep dive a bit. How we eco-design a low-tech website. Today I want to talk to you about eco-design in general and how we applied it. What were the outcomes of that as well? So in order to do that, we are going to talk about very different things. First, what was the context and how we designed our website in the first place? What pushed us to do that? Then we are going to talk about UX and marketing. You might not know that yet, but in order to eco-design something, you first need to go back to the drawing board and look at the purpose of what you're designing. So have more or less a product approach. In the third chapter, what we're going to look at is technology and optimization. We're going to deep dive a bit further on that. And then we're going to talk about what's next, right? Based on all this, hopefully you will have an idea of what an eco-design approach can be. It's not a manual for that, but it's just an example that may give you some ideas. So we're going to talk about a lot of buzzwords as well. I don't want you to be scared. That's why I have a disclaimer right here. We're going to talk about many different things that you might have heard about before. We're going to talk about performance, SEO, frameworks, accessibility, crafting, funneling, building and deploy applications, and of course, eco-design. Let's get started. So, the context and inception. I think if we have enough experience in IT, we have all been there somehow, right? We have all managed legacy applications. At some point, we have taken over the work of someone else and frack. It becomes unmaintainable. We don't understand what's going on there, and we have to deep dive. Sometimes we spend a few hours. Sometimes we spend days, even months, understanding what has been coded before. And it introduces a lot of things, right? Latency, time to market is slower, all these things. Our legacy website was like that. I mean, just for a website, we needed a PhD in order to understand all the components. I mean, it was demonstrating the technological know-how of our consultants and experts, but somehow, well, it was not showcasing digital sobriety at all. For a simple website, we had a Google Kubernetes engine in the background. We Dockerized our website fully. We had to manage a static IP. We had external dependencies, such as we've GoDaddy here for the DNS. We used for headless CMS Google JSON API. All these were decisions that were made in order to help the maintainability and in order to anticipate the needs of some people, right? We put it on Google Kubernetes because we thought at the time, or the people designing it thought at the time, that we are going to scale, so we need to handle scalability. We used Vue.js and all because we needed to showcase as well our expertise in it. So there were a few reasons why we went that way, but it became quite unmaintainable. Some design decisions were really difficult to backtrack on, and in order to have a new joiner, most probably a junior, working on our website, well, the cost of entry was too high, right? The learning curve was a bit too steep. So these design decisions, we were regretting it now, not back then, and we needed to do something about it. Because all of this has become some kind of chimera. Everything was put together and all, and in order just to work on something very simple, you needed to understand the whole stack. That didn't go well with us. It created some kind of zombie website, meaning that it still lives somehow. It's out there, but the maintainability is dragging. New content is lagging, and in the end, not many people want to work on that. And we were losing money. That's also something because, as you can see, the infrastructure was oversized. Right, so how can we reflect our brand further, because it's all about that, right? The website in the end should have reflected our brand. We are Zeneca, so we do crafting. We have an investment, a strong investment in green approaches. We want to be inclusive as much as possible, and we want to be responsible. So we wanted a new website that could reflect these values. So we went back to the drawing board. Let me tell you a bit about UX and marketing. Well, of course, some people might say that modern marketing is just like that, right? We can't compete on prices. We want to get out there. We want to find a market. Because we can't find it, we're going to work around things. That's not totally that, right? So we went to the fundamentals of marketing. We went back there. And going back to the fundamentals, we got inspired by Donald Miller's book on marketing made simple. From this book, we had 3 axes that we wanted to develop. We wanted to have user-centric services in our website, meaning that when you go on a page, the page can talk to you very fast. Meaning that if you want to know more about our services, you go to our service page, you get directly what you need. You want to work with us, you want to have recruitment opportunities at Zeneca, you go to a career page, you should have automatically the kind of information you're looking for. Okay, so this is the first thing. The second aspect is we need to know what Zeneca is. That's the first thing. When somebody asks any company, okay, what do you do? They should go to the website and they should understand it very fast. So that's the idea here. We wanted to refocus on one-liners. Very memorable sentences that people can get very fast and they can also say afterwards to other people. Okay, so we need to have the value proposition in there, and it needs to be very simple. We need to understand what we do. Once we have got the first 2 ones, we need to add a lean UX wireframing. So there are 2 words that are very important, lean and UX. These are the most important words. Wireframing, we're going to see that afterwards. Lean means we want to eliminate all the fat, all the things that are around that we might think ourselves might be relevant later, but are not relevant now. We want to focus on our product and the fact that it's optimized for what it needs to be. UX, because we want to be user-centric. So we need to define an experience. We need to design it as well. So that's why we went back to the drawing board and we focused on these 2 things, lean and UX. Let's talk about user-centric services first. Our first approach, because we think that the most impact in a green IT approach is by design, was to make sure that we have the correct content for the correct people in the first place, right? So in that approach, you might not know that, but I think around 70% of the biggest impact you can have in the optimization of your resources, on the optimization of your infrastructure sizing and all, comes from architecture decisions and design decisions. So that's why we spent a bit more time on this first. In order to establish these user-centric services, as I said, we looked at 1 user segment per page. So for prospects, for the people that we want to talk with in order to expand our business, we wanted to look at the services page. For potential applicants, we wanted to have a dedicated page with the careers page. And last but not least, we have a community. We have a community of developers that we talk to through our meetups. We also have a community of partners who want to look at our events globally, either the free ones or our training courses. So we want these events page to be engaging and that people can go there and they know exactly what's going on in the few next months in Zeneca. All right? So that's how we directed it. That's the first thing. We wanted to address 3 different segments first. But it's not over yet, right? Because we can't have the same kind of speech for each segment. We want to show a different facet. We are not talking about the same thing to the same people, right? Zeneca is a whole thing, but the way you present it, you might emphasize more on something rather than others, depending on who you talk to. We might not tell our customers the fact that we have good insurance benefits, right, internally. That's not something that is interesting for them. It's just a very, very small example. So in order to do that, we try to get a feel, to define what kind of feeling we want to have in each page. So for the services, we want to be very customer-centric. We want to only talk about what we can bring to the customer, right? What they can get by working with us. When we talk about career, we want to focus more on the life as a Zenica employee. So we want to give a glimpse of what it's like to work with us, with career management, with the teammates that you are going to bond with the kind of technology practices that you're going to upskill on. Right? For the events, we want to show that we are continuously active. Right? We want continuous updates there, we want engaging content, and we want them outside as much as possible. So we want to have an up-to-date page. For the accessibility and the end users' habits in the region, what we found out based on our previous analytics is that for this kind of website, most people will actually look at it from a desktop. So the other ones will look at it from a mobile phone, usually on the subway, because we look at the time where people actually access it. And it means that they will have unstable connection. What we deduce from that is that mostly we should focus more on the overall user experience on desktop, for sure. But if we want to be completely inclusive, we have to rely heavily on responsive design. Another thing on that part is that since there are unstable connections, right, in the MRT, you don't want the page to load too slowly. If it loads too slowly, the connection might get interrupted. So you might only load the page partially. So what you would like is for a very fast load, so a very low footprint on each page. We can develop a lot more techniques that I'm going to talk about afterwards in the third chapter. Once we have that, another thing in terms of eco-design is that we don't want people on the desktop to have more information or better user experience than those on mobile. We want to have an experience that is the same, basically, on desktop and on mobile. One of the reasons for that, and it's purely meant for eco-design here, you might not know this, but the manufacturing of the screens is actually very impactful for the resources in the planet. Once you got rare metals in there, for a big screen, right, for a 4K screen, you will use a lot of metals in terms of energy consumption, in terms of water depletion, a lot of different things. It will have a big impact. So in order to lessen that impact, we are trying to make sure that people can still access completely with full potential our website with a smaller screen in order to reduce the impact on manufacturing. Okay. Of course, there are other things to consider that I'm going to talk about later on the fact that we still need to support devices that are 2, 3, 5 years old behind, right? Because we don't want people to keep buying the latest device in order to be able to just look at a website. Let's move further, sorry. Let's look at our proposition of a one-liner. So we talked about the user-centric approach, right? Now we want to define the overall point of entry. Why should you go to a website in the first place? And if you are not aligned with the value proposition, how you can directly move away from it, okay? This is something that you might not see in most approaches when designing a website, but when you are designing with eco-design in mind, what you want is people to spend less time with your brand. Because when they come in, they should know exactly what you're offering. They should feel fast. Either they're engaged and they say, okay, I think there is something to look at here, and they will explore further, or based on the first intuition, they will say, nah, that's not for me, and they will drop. And that way, we will reduce network consumption, we will reduce a lot of things, we will also not waste the time of the people. Okay, so we are trying to be a bit more responsible that way. So with our one-liner, that's how we designed it, and it's just an approach or a framework for you to try to practice it on your own brand. We first give a context. That context is that we have a fast-paced market. That's our context in Zenica, right? We have a fast-paced IT market. In that context, we got an issue. The issue is that most IT departments, they struggle to maintain the quality of their deliveries. At some point, one way or another, they will tell us, oh, we are not testing that much anymore. We don't know how to test. Oh, we need to enhance the quality of our production here because we see that after 1 or 2 years, the maintainability is not as high as we expected it to be. So you have these kind of challenges coming up, right, in the mid to long term of the software lifecycle. So these are the issues that we are working with at Zenica. We have a solution for that. That's a very generic one. And we have a positive outcome that we can propose. So being very generic, so not deep diving on how we do that, first we say Zenica provides expertise. Okay, that's an aspect of our product. We provide expertise to build high-performing teams. The how is, we are going to look at it later. The how is through training, delivery, and consulting, but at the core of it, expertise to build high-performing teams. Your teams, our teams, a mix of those, that doesn't really matter, but that's what we propose. The positive outcome of it is that it enables the production of sustainable IT products. With Zenica, what we try to look at is not the one-off solutions. We're trying to look at what makes sense for the life cycle of your solution. So we're trying to have a product approach. If you are designing a one-off solution, you might not need a strong architecture in there. If you are feeling like you want to design a platform, something that can last at least 5 years, you need a bit more thoughts into it. An emergent architecture might give you more problems than it can solve for others, right? So we have to find a balance between time to market, sustainability, maintainability, and all. But with our approach, with expertise in mind, we think that the positive outcome is at least you have the ability to design sustainable solutions. It doesn't mean that you are going every time to design them, but you have the ability to do that. Okay, but now what? Okay, we got our value proposition and all, and you can see it in our website. Of course, to make it snappier, we have only the last part. The context and the issue statement, you can just find it when you look for us on Google. So now what? If you pass the first barrier of the value proposition and you think that there's an interest, what we propose is 3 main offers to get started in order to enable your teams. We can either build sustainable softwares together. That's our delivery approach. Of course, we always have premium IT professional services in mind. We can develop your talents. We will tailor learning paths for your teams in order to upskill in the way that you think is relevant. And last but not least, we will also help you modernize your practices in order to be result-driven. I mean, look at the economy today. With COVID, there is a lot of uncertainty. Yesterday, you thought that, okay, we had a plan, we had a budget, and by, I don't know, in 6 months, we are going to get there. But that's not taking into account the fact that the constraints keep evolving. MOH in Singapore, the government, keeps changing the rules, and that's normal because we are in a reactive mode. Once you are in a reactive mode like that, your focus needs to shift away from the objectives to the change management. In order to do that, what we provide is to rework your dynamic and rework your focus. Okay? So these are the 3 main offers that we propose, but under the umbrella of our value proposition, enabling your teams. So we've passed the first 2, right? And just once we have that, we had designed a homepage, basically. That was the core of the homepage, our value proposition and the menu. So we're past that. So now we need to get further. If people are engaged by our content, by our value proposition, where do they go next? That's the Lean UX wireframing. So that's our storytelling. We introduce people to our world with the homepage. And we want them to fail fast. We don't want to waste your time. And we want to have clear call to actions. What's the next step? So we have summarized our value, and we have a menu, a footer. We know where to go next. We have 3 links today to go to a contact us page. If you're convinced and you don't need more convincing and you just want to chat because you're you are more focused on the personal touch, then just contact us. We got 2 links in order to deep dive on our services. Because we're a business, so our first approach is to say, okay, what we can provide to our business partners out there. The third part is careers. If you want to join us, okay, we have 1 link for the career path, but it's at the top, so it's kind of highlighted. And the events. The events are only for the ones who are convinced that we can already propose something, and most of the time they're already a part of our community. So the people going to the events page are not that many, because when they don't know us, they don't directly go there. They might just be a bit curious and look at it at first, but the people that are more engaged by the content there are the ones that who knows what we are providing. From the contact us page, it's a direct email. We don't want people to go through a reCAPTCHA or something like that. We want people to know exactly, okay, how do they contact us? We got direct email, and if you want, at the bottom, we even got a phone number and an address if you want to drop by. Sorry. For services, we summarize our 3 offers, the one I described you earlier, and for that, in order not to have too many information directly in our website and to keep the footprint very low, we have downloadable PDFs directly. So you don't need to browse, you just keep it offline and you read it whenever you want. We also have a 3 steps mini guide on how to engage us that will end up just directly sending us an email. And then we can chat about how we can provide the best services for you. We do this for startups, for companies alike, for bigger companies alike. It works pretty well so far. And last but not least, if that's in that order, right? Last but not least, we got the training courses details, because if you look at the training courses, what we provide, you have a rough idea of the kind of expertise that we can bring to your teams. So that's why we have detailed this a bit further, but again, at the lower part, so that you don't necessarily have to read all this. Of course, from the training courses, we have other links to our partners with Eventbrite, Skills Matter, our main partner for training, and also our website dedicated to packaged courses, which is the Zenica training website. For careers, we talk about the perks first, what can be attractive for the people who want to join us. And we talk about the job openings, because these are the concrete opportunities for people to join us. And there is an application form for that. The application form is, of course, a Google form. No need for reCAPTCHA or anything. You just fill in that. We get a notification, and we can just jump in there. We also showcase the team diversity. We introduced it because most of the time when we discussed with the applicants, they did say that what was attractive in Zenica is the fact that they saw so much diversity in our teams, and they want to learn from them. They said that, oh, you must never get bored, because you have people experiencing cloud in front end, in back end, in infrastructure and network. You have consultants, architects. You have so many diversified people with a lot of expertise that you may only grow in our environment. So we want to showcase this. For the events, we want to have a direct linkage to our partner website. Okay, and that's lean for wireframing. See, here in a nutshell, you have exactly what our website is about. 4 pages, main pages, and with the content in the middle and the end call to actions at the end. Of course, we want to refocus a lot on the direct emailing, because that's how we get in touch and that's how we can talk about things further. So it's demo time. Just very quickly. So that's our website. As I said earlier, it's designed in order to be responsive. So here I show you the mobile view. If you look at what I said earlier, you got the call to actions, you got the footer. The footer, usually you want only to have some links like the training catalog, Zenica group and all, and connect with us, that are for the people that are convinced you can bring them something, right? So you don't want to highlight too much of these things at the top. Here, that's our introduction. That's how we get to meet each other. And then once you go there, that's exactly the lean wireframing I was talking to you about. Either you contact us directly, or you click on Let's Connect here, that's the same, or you just want to deep dive further. Here you got an exploration of what we offer. If that's not enough for you, you click on Explore this offer and you'll download the PDF file. or you look at how we can get started, and you can contact us directly with a pre-filled form. Right? These are the different topics that we can help you on if you're interested. And let's go for the careers first. In the careers, we tell you a bit more about us, what we can propose, internal training, diverse experiences. You can submit your resume directly through email, or you can explore our job openings, and you can meet our team here. All right? For the events, we do update this content. I will tell you a bit more about it afterwards, but we do update these contents regularly. I will show you how. Okay, so yeah, in a nutshell, that's our website. Very lean, very straightforward, and we want to keep it that way. Okay. If you got any questions, don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. I have it directly in front of me. Okay. Let's talk about tech and optimization now, because we have designed what we want to have, and we've done, I think, something like 50% of the work already. So in an eco-design approach, there's the word design in there. Most of the investment is on that first inception part. Now let's talk about optimization, but in that case, you're going to see that the impact is lesser. Of course, it's meaningful and it's relevant. That's why we are going to talk about it. As you can see, there is no silver bullet in tech. Don't expect everything to work on serverless and Kubernetes. So we started with an MVP. Okay, we need to implement something. Once you start with an MVP, you need to follow the lean principle, right? So 4 pages only, let's stick to that. And let's have a quick time to market, because that's what we want. We want this website to be out there very fast. So let's be very simple. That's what we did. We wanted to have an HTML wireframe. So we didn't start, and maybe some UX designer friends will just throw cans at me, but we didn't start with a wireframing tool or anything like that. We just started with simple HTML and CSS. And some designers can also do that. So we had a deployable static website directly out of the box with our designing session. And we could provide feedback as well. We were saying, oh, be careful about that responsive design. Be careful about that kind of text font size and things like that. So we had direct feedback, and we could deploy it directly. We had a mobile-first approach. So we wanted to have something very sober. Every time that we kept adding something to a page, the question was, do we really need it? Is it in line with the kind of information that we want to provide the user? Is it really helpful for the user to know these things? If it's not, then let's just remove it. Let's be minimalistic, because as I said, people should be able to navigate very smoothly on a small device. And we had this. And we had this from the very beginning. Okay? The rest that we did is further tech optimization and regrouping, and it was mostly on the development part. But for the content and the structure of the website, we already had it from the MVP. And you can see how time to market can be very well enhanced when you have a lean approach. And that's also eco-designing, because in the end, you are making sure that people spend less time on your website, which is a good thing, to be honest. So let's harden the implementation now. So we had our MVP. Of course, it was not state-of-the-art implementation. So we asked ourselves the very first question about architecture. Do we really need? That's the first thing that you ask yourself in an eco-design approach. Because if you don't need it, don't do it. Do we really need a headless CMS? That's what we had beforehand, right? People were writing in an Excel sheet, and we had this JSON API in order to provide content to our website. Do we really need that? Our maintainers at Zenica are GitHub users. And you take any kind of engineers working at Zenica, they know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript by heart. So no, you don't need a headless CMS. They can just edit a JSON file or something like that, and they can just do a pull request. We merge that, and it's getting out, right? And it's being reviewed at the same time. So everything can be directly done in GitHub. Do we need a JS framework? That's a very relevant question. Today, it's static HTML and all. We have a read-only stateless website. We removed the forms, the communication forms and all, because we want you to use your email client. well, we didn't have state management, nothing like that, so we didn't believe in a JS framework, and we kept it very, very simple. Do we need a bundler? That was a harder topic. Bundlers are really neat, and most of the time you will need them in order to take care of the compression, minification, a lot of different things. I love bundlers, to be honest. In that case, we said, let's postpone that decision. Let's not use a bundler first. If it grows the complexity, then we'll use it. For now, we are handling it fine. See, do we really need it now is something that we asked ourselves. Do we need containers? You know that we have containerized our previous website. Here, do we need it? I mean, no, it's just static content delivery. Why would you want to containerize it and run it on computing systems engines? But that's not the purpose. So you have an overall idea on how we design the architecture. We try to be very minimalistic in that aspect. So we wanted to also not duplicate too much code. So we designed a very small script that was a builder assembler that was taking JSON data where people would input the relevant content, our employees, the job positions, the events, what else? Well, everything that was kind of dynamic in our website that you didn't want to edit the HTML directly, right? Because it was a bit repetitive. So we put that in JSON data, and what we wanted is to inject that JSON data inside our HTML pages, and in order to deploy the static content out there afterwards. So we designed templates, HTML templates, and at the core of it, we use pages as the deployable artifacts. The builder assemblers, they would read the JSON data, and based on the HTML snippets, templates, they will just inject the JSON data, and then you'd have lists, you'd have content like that we could inject back to the pages. Of course, in the pages, as you can see in all the everywhere, we always have some common content. We have the menu, the footer, and the GDPR banner, because if you agree, we do collect some elements in Google Analytics. Only if you agree, because otherwise we don't even trigger the script. So putting this together, we have pages, all right, from dynamic content, from more static content. And these pages, they reference static resources, CSS, images, and just a very small bit of JavaScript that we want to get rid at some point, because I think we can do it fairly. So that's all. The builder assembler is just 40 lines of Node.js, including the loggers, what's going on, and it's just 20 lines of bash, doing change directory, copying, and stuff. And that's it. No need for a bundler, right? So we decided we can take a bundler later, but for now, I mean, this is doing the job. This is very minimalistic. We didn't need a framework. We didn't need anything else. Pure HTML, CSS, JavaScript, static resources, a few lines of bash, and a few lines of Node.js. The Node.js code doesn't even need dependencies. So if you do an npm install, you're not even dragging in modules, because by default, when you're aggregating things, you just need basically to use the file system API. We got a question. What if the, okay, let me show the question here. What if the current framework architecture is not following the lean approach? How do you advocate the alignment transformation to your clients or stakeholders? What value could be presented for such? All right, let me try to absorb that before I answer. What if the current framework architecture is not following the lean approach? Okay, so you want transformation. So if you have something in place and you have a framework architecture and you think that it's not flexible enough in order to provide new services or to realign with what you want to propose to your customers, you have different ways of doing it. Well, you have the atomic way. The nuclear way is to get rid of everything and start from scratch. Of course, you wouldn't want that in most cases. There is another approach, that's the Strangler approach, where you would restart something on the side minimalistically, and more you will pass the feature to that small portion from the previous side. Of course, this will need orchestration at a higher level in order to redirect most of the calls to that new platform and slowly strangle the existing one. What value could be presented for such? The value of a new platform or a new architecture there, what you want to showcase is the time to market, how fast you can deliver new features there. Also, how engaged are your developers writing features for that? How long do they need to test? How long do they need to do code reviews? How long do you need people from business to know to review that and to be sure that it can get in production? Okay, if you look at all that, if you look at all the alignment and what you can gain, this is what you should be proposing from the eco-design perspective. I hope it was useful information. Okay, let's move further. Don't hesitate to ask questions like this. I will try to answer them. So now we had, our code base, but we still needed to design a deployment. Of course, it was very easy because it's just simple static HTML pages with static content out there. So how do we deploy that? As I said earlier, we have everything in GitHub. From there, we decided to use Cloud Build. That's the well, not CI, but the continuous integration tool that we can use directly in GCP. The reason for why we use Cloud Build is that we decided to deploy on GCP, right? So we decided to choose service that was closer to our deployment platform in order to build our stuff. When I say build, it's just running the Bash program and Node.js one in order to stitch everything together. So it stitches the HTML, the CSS, JS assets, and we have overall 5 read-only pages. The home page, services, carriers, events, and the contact us, which is very, very small. In there, for the hosting, just Google Cloud Storage, a simple bucket. Okay, we host that there. From there, we have other benefits because we can use a front-end load balancer with an integrated CDN in GCP, so we can cache the content and distribute in a distributed manner. And that's already out of the box, so that's pretty neat. Then we just needed to decide on a static IP, right? Because what we want is to point with zenica.sg DNS. We want to point it to our static IP. And for the SSL certificate, we already have everything managed at the Google Load Balancer part. We can have a Google Managed SSL certificate. So everything is fairly contained here and easily we can administrate it, very easily because it's in one console. So we waste less time. We still have a dependency to Google Analytics that we have to assess whether or not we want to keep going. One of the reasons, either we want to look at something else or we want to remove it completely. We need to explore that a bit further. Okay, and that's it. I mean, look at how simple it is. Look at on the left what we used to have. Look at what we have today. And imagine the time that we can spend on providing content and releasing it out there compared to the time that you needed before that. Okay, before that, you had so many points of failure that at some point, yes, something was breaking. And in order to analyze where it broke and to fix it, it took a while. Look at now, with this kind of architecture, how fast it is to maintain, right? So we don't have any zombies anymore. I mean, we can publish content regularly. That's what we do. Today, we publish content sometimes 3-4 times a day with just PRs that we can review. And we gain a lot of money. I mean, it's very cheap to host things in a bucket and just to have a load balancer. CDN cost is pretty cheap. We mainly pay for the static IP, for the DNS part, of course, and for the Google Cloud Storage, but that's very minimal. Also, we chose the GCP bucket in the Singaporean region. In order to be a bit more eco-designed, we might have used, selected one in the US West Coast because they are more optimized in terms of renewable energy. In Singapore, since Singapore cannot choose the source of their energy, the carbon footprint is actually higher, but they cannot master it, right? So it will always be this way. We still decided to be closer here in order to reduce the network latency and to not use too much the network relays, right? This is also something to consider in an eco-design approach. We are trying to influence the overall infrastructure management that is required to sustain our products. So in that case, you don't want to make people deploy more, cables or network antennas and things like that. If you have a local service, host it in a local way. That's also an advice in order to reduce the footprint on the network infrastructure that would be needed. And okay, we had deployment, we have code, everything is out there. We already had our solution from the start. So now we can optimize. But you see, we're already past 70% of the overall optimization. So whatever we can do now is actually just sugarcoating. But let's look at it. Accessibility. That's very important because we want to be as inclusive as possible. That's also part of our brand. So we restructured the titles further. Of course, it was already accessible, our pages, but we wanted it to be very accessible. So we restructured the titles, we changed a bit the layout. The content was the same. And we did what we call the no CSS crash test. That's this thing here, just a moment. We just remove the CSS entirely, and we see if we can still read the whole page and if it makes sense. Here, as you can see, it's already structured. You already know how to navigate from one content to the other, and you can read it as if it were just an article. Okay? Each page is like that. So that's fairly good on our side. We also need to introduce a printable page CSS. When you want to print our website, you will see that it will remove the menu, it will remove the footer, and you will only have the content. And that's what is most relevant. It is good practice to have printable CSS, print CSS every time you are designing a website or an application for that matter, in order to be sure what you are printing. For SEO, we wanted to enhance it a bit further in order to address the people that would be interested in our website. For that, we make sure that we don't use buttons at all, okay, except for just the menu, the toggling menu, which is over there. I don't know if you see it. But all the rest are crawlable links, and we want to keep it that way because links are much more accessible to the screen readers. We wanted to enhance the performance. Of course, it was already performant, right? Static HTML, CSS, JavaScript with low footprint, but we could go further. So we worked on the resource minification. For that, we have everything in cloud build. This is running additional scripts for minification and compression, JZipping, and hosting of this JZip version in our bucket. And we do serve only JZip content. We also resized the images completely. We gained more than 85% on the size of the images. So basically, we started with images for the consultants on the career page that were around, I'd say, 200 KB each, something like that. So overall, if you have a lot of people that you want to have there, you see that you're already reaching a lot of megabytes to be downloaded. Of course, you can have tricks like lazy loading that we have implemented that will reduce the first loading part, but it's not the best. We managed to reduce that with resizing, with compression and all. We managed to go below 10K for most of them, which is perfect for us. So we had a bit of a quality degradation, but that's fine because it's, remember that we want to target the lower resolution screens, so you can't even see it, to be honest. Then we had a caching strategy. Of course, I talked about the CDN part, the content delivery network, right? But we also worked on the cache control headers to make sure that your resources, you cache them for at least a day. It doesn't matter that you get the latest update that we can push today. You can have it tomorrow. I mean, no rush. We propose information way more in advance, so you are not, you don't need real-time notifications. So that's okay for us to have a good caching strategy and to make sure that you have efficient delivery here. What are the outcomes of all this? Because we talked about optimization and all, and yeah, we made sure that we crafted that website in order to showcase our capability to do that. But we had very good outcomes coming from it. First, we are in line with our values, and that's the best thing, right? When you work is actually a demonstration of your culture. That's where you want to be. So that's all about Green IT. Our website is not perfect, to be honest, but it scores very well with the incoindex.fr process of evaluating websites. And if you run Lighthouse on it, you'll see that we scores pretty well as well. You can do the test yourself. We have a good supporting material today, and that's the perfect example, right? I'm talking about our website. I'm very transparent about how we designed it and what we can do with that. And I can showcase what digital sobriety is and what it can bring. We reduce the cost, we gain money out of it, we got more engagement, we also more straightforward to our users because they know exactly what we can propose them when they go to the website. Most of the people now, when we give them the website links, they know exactly where to go and they don't spend too much time on the others, on the other parts. They do if they are interested to dig further, but otherwise, I've seen customers opening only the things that we send them because these are the supporting materials they want to look at. The rest, they don't really care. And we're saving bandwidth, we're saving their time, we're saving our time with this approach. Simplicity. We can deploy 3 updates per week, even more than that, but currently that's where we are. We deploy around 3 updates per week. Either pure optimizations, some new events, the job openings, because we keep rotating, I think, every 2 weeks, something like that. So yeah, it's very smooth out there. And we have just basic HTML, CSS, JS. So it means that every time we got someone new coming, usually they do a PR 1 or 2 days after they join Zenica. If they have not, if they don't go to a customer assignment, they can work on it and they do contribute fairly easily to that. The learning curve is very minimal. So we have a local alignment as well for the content of our website. That's also one good outcome. Having an eco-design approach helped us redefine what our local business model was. If it was sustainable, if it was in line with our culture, with our values, and if it was reflected in our website. We can also now pivot faster because we have a very simple base. It's not too complex, it's not too complicated, meaning that it scales very well. And because of that, we're very flexible on what our next step should be. All right, so all for Zenica in Singapore, the development of our brand. So what's next from there? We've seen the good outcomes, what we could produce. Of course, it's not over. And when we have an eco-design approach, nothing is ever over, right? Until the decommissioning and the recycling of whatever you have produced. So what's next for us? Of course, we are going to rework a bit the UI UX to make sure that it's always aligned with what you want to offer. If tomorrow we shift a bit or we pivot, what we want is to is for the content to be aligned with what we want to propose to our customers, to our future applicants, and to our community. We would like also the website to be a one-stop shop so that people don't navigate too much to other websites and all. So that's why at some point we want to have all our event details brought in our website, to not rely too much on Eventbrite, for example, and to have a payment gateway there for courses so that we don't multiply the means to get to one point. Of course, we also want to develop a green best practices referential. That's also one of the main targets of an eco-design approach. Once you have done all these architecture reflections and all, what you would like is for them to be logged in somewhere so that people can learn from it. You want to start a virtuous cycle here. You want people to understand what is at stake, what are the good outcomes of having certain approaches in eco-design, and what are the impacts of their decisions. You have to evaluate the impact of choosing a framework, the impact of badly designing the user experience. You have to understand all that, and what we want to showcase in the referential is the gains that we got out of these choices. So we will start it. Once we start it, we want to show this is the generic approach, this is our approach, these are the gains that you have, and the positive outcomes that you get that you didn't get before. Right? So this is what we want to start. For the optimization part, we want to stop Google Analytics or maybe find an alternative that has the lowest footprint. You might not know that, but today our Google Analytics takes roughly half of the size of a page. Of course, it's cached content, and it's not well cached, to be honest, But on top of that, we are proposing the option to use it or not on your site, because you might just refuse to send us any information, so it's completely useless in that case. You have other solutions out there that have lower footprint, that are less intrusive, that gather less information, and you are able to customize them a bit further, and the footprint is very low. So we want to also look at these alternatives very soon. Today, also for our marketing purpose, Zenica, we use a font. Most of the companies, right, they will have their own font. In Zenica, we use Lato. I want to survive the marketing ninja, so I need to see how I can approach them with that. But the idea is to use a generic font. If we use a generic font, we can gain a lot of loading time as well. Of course, we have delayed the font loading. We have put it as asynchronous, so it doesn't block the content display on your page. But it's still something that you download on your device, and you might not need. I mean, it's just fancy, right? But we can use our Arial is very neat, and if you use Arial, everyone has it already installed, and you use the network efficiently for that matter. So we would like to remove it at some point. For the CI/CD part, how we build, of course, this is Lato. We want to enhance, optimize, the build time. Today, since we're using Cloud Build is running an npm install every time, and it's using a generic npm image in order to build to compress our resources and gzip them. For that, what we want is to have a predefined build image so that you don't have to re-download everything every time. So we really want to optimize the deployment part, which is not completely optimized as much as we want it to be. All right, and that's over. Do you have any question on eco design, outcomes, next steps, anything like that? Please put them in the chat. In the meantime, I do hope that it gave you some insights on why we had this approach, what the outcomes were. If you can gather, some hints on how you can apply some tricks in your current projects or maybe your next project, that would be great. And if you want to share about it, you can also contact us later. So if you don't have more questions, I will stop the session soon, but I would really like to thank a few people for this website. The first person is a former employee. She left us not too long ago, but we are still quite close with Zenica. Hopefully it will stay that way. Clara Co was the one who designed the MVP I was telling you about. It was already fully functional. We could have deployed it as it was, and she did this amazing work in only 2 days, integrating the wireframing and everything. We have Jermaine Wong, our UX designer. She also modernized the UI look and feel. She moved a few things around in order to improve the experience. That was great. And of course, we got the legacy team, right, with Drew, Mahin, and Nassan, and they were really helpful in the transitioning of the new infrastructure. All right, and of course, we have all of the contributors, because as I said earlier, our website now is very simple, so we have more contributions, which is nice. Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance. I hope it was useful for everyone. You can also drop comments and questions directly in the chat. The link will stay. It was a live session, but we will keep the recording online afterwards. Thank you very much, everyone. And I hope I can talk to you again about eco design another time. Cheers.